Okay, in this video, I'm going to show you how to add labels to our narration. In the previous video, we recorded this voiceover and made it match and trimmed off extra space, silent space at the end. Since the last video, I've renamed a few things so it's easier. This I've renamed my Premiere user interface. That's just the timeline or sequence. It's just a sequence file. You leave your mouse over, it'll show you. This is the audio voiceover that I recorded, and I gave it the name of Naming the Areas. That's just me. You do not have to do that. And then this I renamed as the screenshot. Speaking of which, if you were to close and reopen this, you might see a scary message show up here that Adobe can't find your resource. It just takes a while, but as a word of warning, this screenshot came from this screenshot right here. This is the actual file. If I were to rename this or move it, then Adobe Premiere would not know where to find it, and you would end up with problems. So just once you've imported something into your project, don't move it around. Put it where you want it before you import it. All right. So now we want to have labels pop up whenever I talk about an area. And we're going to create, let's see, 7 labels. We'll have one for the workspaces. We'll have one for the source monitor, program monitor, timeline, project panel, tool panel, and audio meter. And we're going to have them appear on the screen when they're mentioned. So let's just listen for a second. This is the Adobe Premiere layout. At the top, we have different workspaces we can choose from. In this area right here is the source monitor. Right here is the program monitor. Below that is the timeline. Bottom left area is the project panel. This small area here is the tool panel. And this on the far right is the audio meter panel. Okay, so basically you can kind of see where they're brought up, where they're mentioned, like right there. You can see the audio peeking up. But I want a way to remember that so I don't have to keep playing. So I'm going to do this one more time, but I'm going to add, as I go through, I'm going to add a marker. Now when you add a marker is nothing more than a little mark, and you'll see that goes on the timeline, so it helps me remember where things are. And you add a marker by pressing the letter M, and it will put a marker wherever the playhead is. So as we go through this time, I'm just going to tap the letter M whenever it says the beginning. So here we go. And don't have anything selected, so just click up here in a blank area, and I'm going to put my playhead here and hit spacebar, and my fingers, I'm going to move over to the M key as I'm listening. This is the Adobe Premiere layout. At the top, we have different workspaces we can choose from. In this area right here is the source monitor. Right here is the program monitor. Below that is the timeline. Bottom left area is the project panel. This small area here is the tool panel, and this on the far right is the audio meter panel. Okay, so I did that just by pressing the letter M, and now I have markers, and the benefit is I can go to the next marker and the next marker, and if I learn the keyboard shortcuts, Shift M or Shift Command M, so Shift M takes me forward, add the command to that, and I go backwards. If I accidentally put a marker here, just do undo, or go to that marker and just simply go to clear selected marker. Okay. Anyway, and you can actually click on, I think you can click on it, right delete, right click, clear selected. Yeah, you can. Okay. So now we're going to add text. The text is going to show up for the sequence. For the workspaces. It's going to show up here, and it's going to stay on the screen the whole time. So let's create our first text by coming over here to the toolbar and click the letter T, and I'm just going to click up here, and it creates a little box where I can type. And I'm just going to type my first one. And I'm going to do, I think it's workspaces. Okay, workspaces. Come back, click this arrow. Now, be careful as you're moving your mouse over the top of this. You'll notice the cursor changes to quite a few things. Okay, this vertical one lets me stretch. I mean, it'll change the size. The same with the angle and the sideways one. There's a round one here, a curved one, that if you click it, you will rotate it. So make sure you don't do that. Let's hit undo, Command Z. And I want to pick not just the generic font that's here, but I want to add just a little bit of style to this. So I'm going to put this where I want it. First of all, I probably want to make sure it's going to fit everywhere. I notice workspaces is not my largest word. And by far, I'm going to have trouble fitting my label in this area. So I'm just going to take a look at something for a sec. I'm going to pretend I'm working on Project Panel. I'm going to double click right in here, and I'm going to type in Project Panel. And then come over here, click the arrow tool, and see it's a little too big. But let's change the size a bit, get it to fit in there. So I know that if Project Panel fits here, all of these others will be okay. All right, so go with the one that's going to give you the problem space-wise. So arrow tool, keep it selected. And we're going to go to another workspace up here. Click on Effects. Oh, I believe it's Graphics. My bad. Click on Graphics. Then click on Edit. Right here. So Graphics, not Browse, Edit. And with the text selected, notice if I click away from it, there's nothing there. I have to click on the actual text, either in the timeline or up here in the program monitor. And I can choose the font. And the font is down here where it says text. And Myriad Pro is just the basic one. I'm going to pick one that's kind of thick. And if I come over here, oh, you can't, it doesn't really help. But my menu's going off the screen. I'm going to go with something a little thicker, easier to read. It may be boring, but I'm going to go with like Arial Bold. Arial Black, yeah. Arial Black. So that's what that looks like. And now that made it kind of too big. I'm going to resize it just a little bit. That's a good size. And then I'm going to come back over here in my edit panel with this selected. The text is black. It doesn't matter if we have it left or center or right aligned. And let's see, I could change the size here, but 100 seems good. And white is boring, so I'm going to click the fill of the text. And I'm going to drag this down to this nice bright yellow, and I'm going to click right here and hit OK. And that looks kind of good to me. I'll reposition it a little bit. Okay, so now I know that this text is going to be good for whichever one I want it to be in. It's going to be good. I might have to make it smaller when I do the one for the tool panel, but that's good enough for now. So I'm going to come back to my editing panel. I'm sorry, my editing workspace. And this is supposed to be the workspaces. So I'm going to put this up where it's supposed to be. Workspaces, kind of maybe high, but not covering the letters. Workspaces. And I want it to last the whole time. So once I mention this, it's going to stay there. And you'll see that when the playhead's not on it, it doesn't show. And it will stay there the whole time. But now I want to change that. So I'm just going to double click inside and call it Workspaces. Good. Hit the arrow key. Don't hit enter because it'll add a blank line. Double check my spacing. And now I want another one. What is the next one I mentioned?
This area right here is the source monitor.
So source monitor. So this one, I've already made this the way I like it. So I want an exact copy. Copy and paste doesn't work as well. You'll end up with weird problems. So here's the way I recommend it. We want to just make a copy of this, but put it up above in this timeline. You'll see that I have extra timelines here. I've been working on a few things. Let me get it back to what yours might look like. I think yours might have been like this. Anyway, timelines will come as you need them. So for example, I want to drag a copy of this up here. I can't just simply drag it up because it goes away from there. Command Z for that. I want to hold down the Option key. So hold down the Option key. On your PC would be the Alt key. And click and drag up. So now I have 2 copies. And they're exactly where the other was. Click on the top one. I know you can't tell you are, but then it's clicked. But then with your arrow tool, just click once on it. Don't click and drag, click once. And then make sure your arrow is in the middle and you don't get a funky little double-sided or curvy or whatever. And then drag it to where you want it to be. And this is going to be source monitor, and I'm going to double click and name this source monitor. Grab the arrow tool and replace that where you want it. And now let's see how that, well, oh, and we want it to appear right here. So I'm going to put my playhead there, and I'm going to resize this to right there. So you watch.
This is the Adobe Premiere layout. At the top, we have different workspaces we can choose from. In this area right here is the source monitor. Right here is the program monitor.
So you see how that's working? And we're going to gradually build up. So, and you can see which one you're working on. So now I'm going to make a copy of this one and drag up. So I'm going to hold down the Option key, click and drag up on this one, straight up. And I'm going to resize this to right here because that's where the next one is. And I'm going to click on this one and then click once and then click again and drag over. And this is the program monitor. So double click inside here. And I only want to change that word. Program monitor. Switch back to the arrow tool. By the way, the keyboard shortcut for switching to the arrow tool is the letter V. See that little tooltip? And for T is T. So you can just hit the letter V when you want to switch to the arrow tool. But probably not when you're typing because you'll type a letter V. I'm going to line it up kind of so it's even with this guy. Make sure that's in the middle. Program monitor shows up right here.
Right here is the program monitor. Below that is the time.
So timeline's next. So put my playhead here. I will Option drag up. I'm going to go a little bit faster. Oops, I accidentally created a... No, I didn't. Okay. I had the text tool selected and I clicked somewhere. I just don't know where. Okay, so timeline is there. I'm going to move it to kind of center of that. And I'm going to Option drag up. This one.
Bottom left area is the project panel.
So project panel's next. That's good there. And shorten that.
The project panel. This small area here is the
So toolbar or tool panel. I'm going to grab this bar and slide up a little bit. Option drag up. Shorten it to be there. Make sure I click on it. Then click here. And right now this is going to have to be rotated, but I'm going to rotate it later. Actually, we could do it now. Okay. So I'll move it over here, just out of the way. I'm going to rename it Tool Panel. Then make sure I have the arrow tool. And we're going to come back to the graphics. And make sure that that's selected here in your timeline. Just scroll up and click Edit. And down here, let's see. Yeah, Align and Transform. So above where we changed the font, make sure you've got this one selected. There's a Rotate. And you could click and drag left or right. Rotate it -90 degrees. So it's vertical this way. It might be easier just to click inside there and type in a -90, hit enter, And then with your tool, notice the tools moved on this layout. With tools, I'm going to click and move here. And that's kind of big. So I am going to shrink the size. It's at 100 here. I think I'm going to make it just a little bit smaller. Something like that works. Ooh, yeah, what the heck. Maybe something like that. And I'm going to go back to the editing workspace, just because it's what we're comfortable with. And I'm going to move this kind of where I would like it. There we go. And now since that one's rotated, it's going to be easy when I copy it for the audio meter. And I'm going to drag this up. And I'm going to option click, drag up. Come on. And it's going to start right here. So I'm going to shorten that. Make sure it's selected. And I'm going to click and drag it over to here. And double click. And this is my audio meter. And arrow tool. Now, that should all be good. You can see it all. And I've got 7 video, well, actually 8 video tracks. And let's just see how it looks.
This is the Adobe Premiere layout. At the top, we have different workspaces we can choose from.
Now, you can't see it because it's scrolled down. So you can also drag this up so you can see everything. And you can also take this gray bar here that divides the audio and the video, and you can slide that down. Since we only have one audio track, you don't really need to see all of that other stuff. But here, I can now see all of it.
This is the Adobe Premiere layout. At the top, we have different workspaces we can choose from. In this area right here is the source monitor. Right here is the program monitor. Below that is the timeline. Bottom left area is the project panel. This small area here is the tool panel. And this on the far right is the audio meter panel.
Okay, so what I'm going to look for in your exported project, by the way, good time to save. So I'm going to hit save. I'm going to look to see that you put text in all the spots. I'm also going to look to see that you used something beyond the standard white Myriad Pro, whatever font that was, and that you changed the color to something high contrast. I also want to see that you rotated the tool panel and the audio meter. Let me unselect that. The audio meter. And that they're just a little bit smaller. And that their timing is good. Okay? Check your timing. All right. Once you've got all that and you've hit save, we're going to go to export. Where is it? Export media. Make sure, by the way, when you choose that export, you're in your timeline and nothing particular is selected. And you're going to, if you haven't changed anything, I mean, if you did it right the last time, these should stay the same. H.264, choose that. High quality 720 HD, don't choose anything else, it's right there. And click on this. We want a different name for it though. This is going to be with labels. So I'm going to click right here and I'm going to add with labels. And I'm going to hit save and now I'm going to hit export. Now what I should have done, good practice would have been for me to make a copy of this here. And I'm going to kind of go backwards. It would have been nice to, let me duplicate this. I will duplicate this, and this will be the one with labels. So that's this one here, and I double click it to make sure that's this one. I'm going to close that one. The one without labels, I'm going to undo and get rid of all those labels because I really didn't want those. And I can clear all the markers. I think if I click away from a marker, I can clear all the markers. So now, this is what it was before I started, and this is what it is after. And I've got 2 versions. I can just look at it and see. That's what I should have done in the video, but it doesn't matter whether you do it or not. But it's a good practice. If you know you're going to do something and maybe change your mind later and go back, just branch out. make a copy of it, and also keep track of which one you're working on right here. Okay? That's it.